Welcome, welcome. Welcome everyone back to our final conversation of day one of the Great Leadership Awakening Summit. I am your host for the hour, the publisher of the Great Leadership Awakening, Kayleigh O'Keefe. It's so nice to see so many friendly faces, co-authors, people who have been joining us throughout the day. We appreciate you. We're so happy to see you. And I am so excited to introduce you to another incredible author of the Great Leadership Awakening, none other than the beautiful Shirley Wantland. Shirley, welcome. So happy to have you here.
Oh, I am so excited to be here. Thank you so much for having me.
Shirley was, let's just say you must be a social media genius because your chapter title isn't just a chapter title, it is a hashtag more love, less fear. I love that. Like, was that intentional? Tell us more behind the hashtag title, which I love.
It was certainly intentional. I want to spark a movement. This has kind of been brewing in my mind for the last few years, particularly with the pandemic. In my own growth work, I can see the times that really fear separates us all from ourselves and from one another. And when we're able to really lean into fear, but go past that and align to love, that's where all the goodness happens. But so often, most of us live in fear of something. And then that kind of creates this alternate reality that we live in. So I'm like, let's break through, yes, more love, less fear. And I really strongly believe in that. And I'm hoping to spark a movement here where people can see in what ways they are living in fear and what ways they can align to love and really kind of burst through that next level of growth and humanness.
It feels like our default as a society is fear. And so therefore it takes some real intentionality to move out of that and into love and start creating a new reality from that place. Because if you just walk around the world or open the news or do it, it's fear, 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 fear. And so we have to create a new way. And you outline that in your chapter. We're going to talk about what it looks like for you to create more love in the world. But let's start with the work that you do, because you are the co-founder and principal of Recovery Consultants. And I just feel deeply that the work that you're doing in the world is more important now than ever before. But tell us a bit more about what you do and why it means so much to you personally.
Yeah, absolutely. So, Recovery Consultants, we are a consulting firm working with individuals and families that are struggling with addiction and mental health. And we are helping them kind of navigate the resources, provide really accountability, support, and structure in an area that oftentimes is accountless, not a lot of structure and not a lot of support. And I have found kind of within the addiction industry, sometimes a lot of the messaging, even from the providers themselves, are very shaming and they're very shame-based. And if you don't do it this certain way, then you're not doing it right, or you don't really want it, or you're enabling, or, just all this cacophony of things that aren't helpful for people that are really trying. So at Recovering Consultants, we're very into inclusive, compassionate, non-judgmental care. And it may not look like what the company next door is doing, but I always say, if there's a will, we will create a way together. And I think that is a big part of it. It's a lot about working with clients rather than telling them I'm Shirley and this is what you should do. And they're like, well, who are you? And why should I listen to you? You don't know me. So yeah, that's in a blip kind of what Recovery Consultants is about.
And you start your chapter though saying I'm not an addict, I'm not a therapist, I'm not an entrepreneur, and yet you find yourself leading people or guiding people or shepherding them through a recovery process to come back to love and come back to connection. If we think of so much of addiction as a disconnection from self, God, others, nature, everything. So how did you come to this place and this path, not being kind of from this world originally?
Absolutely. So I'm not in recovery myself. I felt a calling where pain is pain, right? And I've experienced enough kind of trauma and pain in my own life to make it relatable, and I understand where other people are coming from. And there's a sense of, I never really fit in. I was always kind of like the odd duck, like, being Vietnamese, as I talk about in my chapter, growing up as a Vietnamese, immigrant from refugee parents, like in Oklahoma City in the 1980s and 90s, was I didn't fit in, in a time developmentally, in a place where all you want to do is fit in. It's just like, I just want to be like everyone else. And I was so apparently not. And rather than, being ashamed of that, I've really kind of grown into it and owned it. And it's this kind of, I see the other odd ducks out there, right? I see the other people that don't quite fit the mold of what recovery should be, or what, these things. And we work together and we kind of just create our own little, I always say, like, instead of fitting people into other boxes, like predefined boxes, we just create our own. And it doesn't have to be a box. It can be a parallelogram or a star or an oval. We just figure it out and make it. But I think there's, to answer your question, there's like, I see you, you know what I mean? It's like, I see the person underneath all the labels and all the things that they've been told they were over, their lifetime. It's like, I see underneath all of that. And it's like being able to connect to that part of each person. It's like, that's the gooey stuff. That's what I love about my job.
And I want to dig into your chapter more in just a second, but just to speak to this moment that we're in human history and the last 3 years that, I kicked off today talking about this time being a cocoon or a chrysalis or an opportunity for us to transform. And at the same time, it's been a period of grief, of loss, addiction being on the rise, of isolation. And so just what have you noticed when you see someone and kind of look through and get to the core, like what's really happening in the world right now from your perspective?
It's a lot of pain, unfortunately, and it's a lot of disconnection. I think firstly from oneself, and then that prevents connection outwardly, right, with anyone else. And we've kind of lived in the society, and I think, the pandemic really accelerated the isolation. And I think for people that really need connection to flourish, I think we saw, or at least we did in the mental health and addiction industry, just the rise of number of people who really needed those things to survive. I mean, just even showing up to work, was something to do. And it created sometimes safety, and sometimes, accountability. And with all of those things kind of left to the wayside during the early years of the pandemic, people were really left to their own devices. And sometimes that's not necessarily like the best devices when you're in a place where you're struggling.
Mm. Yeah, I mean, I feel that, in building a business over the last 3 years, like at home, working by myself, for myself for the first time ever. And I think not appreciating that routine of going into an office, of being around my colleagues, the things that I thought were annoying, suddenly I was craving, and realizing that energetic exchange was so important. And so slowly starting to find ways to bring that back in has been really, really important. And because that isolation, like it takes a toll. And I mean, I've personally felt that, and I know that's what many people are feeling.
Absolutely. Yeah, that isolation and lack of accountability and support were huge. And I think that is reflected in the increase of all the things that we see from stemming from mental health and addiction, for sure.
In your chapter, you wrote a line that just like hit me. I loved it so much. It was right on page 1. You said, I did what I needed to survive and keep moving forward. I knew my inherent work ethic and high standards were lost on and exploited by this company. And that's something that spoke to me personally, because I felt like when you have a great work ethic and high standards, it sometimes it does get taken at very, like, you don't feel that sense of appreciation from the corporate world. And so talk to us a little bit about what really sparked you to kind of go on this entrepreneurial journey, even though that wasn't maybe part of your initial plan.
It was certainly not part of my plan at all. I very much liked being a corporate girl. I liked having that paycheck every other week. I liked having the stability, but it got to a point where I looked at my life and for candidly my worth. And I was like, am I getting compensated for my worth? Am I appreciated for my worth? And every time I asked myself that question, it was no. And whether, it was circumstances or what I was interpreting, whatever that was. And like I say in the book, maybe it was just raging hormones, pregnancy hormones. And I was like, I no longer accept this. I believe deeply, I don't know where, because it didn't come from any information or data, just deeply within myself that I am worth more. And I know that this work ethic and the way that I approach things is more valuable than the way that I'm, being treated now, and the way, the recognition and lack thereof and compensation. Like there's more. Why am I giving it all up to a corporation when I could be doing this for myself and really call the shots?
Mm. And you went through a period of time where you were doing it all by yourself and you were figuring it all out. And I'm going to invite you to read from your chapter in just a moment. But eventually you hit this exponential growth spurt in your business. And, I was rereading that today being like, ooh, tell me more, Shirley. Like, what were the things that worked for you for that shift to happen where you went from like, I have to be the one to do it all, to now you had created the space where your business could flourish?
Yeah. And it was a continue and deep journey of letting go of control. There was this sense if Shirley could control everything exactly the way I wanted, then things would be good. And it was just kind of this false belief, this delusion that I was living under. And it was in my coaching that my coach said, so is this like, how are you going to grow your business when there's just one of you? There aren't any more hours of the day there. I mean, are you going to clone yourself or what? I was like, I do want to clone myself. I was like, well, I can do that. But it was in that kind of paradigm of like the proverbial fork in the road. It's like, okay, I say I want to grow the business. Do I really want to grow, or do I want to stay in control? And that was something that I had to see. I was getting in my own way. My control was getting in my own way. Me expecting others to have to do it the way Shirley does it was getting in the way. And it was a process of kind of letting that go and accepting others for the way that they are, that they won't do it the Shirley way. And that's okay. That's why I'm hiring them. That's what else they bring to the table. But really it was just, that innate sense of like control and letting that go. Yes.
I think you describe it in your chapter as like Shirley's secret sauce, and being like, man, why doesn't everyone have Shirley's secret sauce? And you're like, it's my secret sauce. I need other people's secret sauce too.
Yes. And it was understanding that other people had their own secret sauce, and it may be better or different than Shirley's, and that's okay. And that was like the point that I'm like, it was like, it sounds so simple, but it was such like an aha moment in my mind where I'm like, I get it now. All this time I was searching for other people with Shirley's secret sauce. I'm like, that's like impossible. Like, how can anyone else have that? So I was setting myself up in this like no-win situation. I'm like, see, this is why I can never grow my business, and see, this is why I can never be successful. And I was like, no, I was just in my own way.
I love this. And Lisa reflecting secret sauce comes in a billion varieties. I think like we're at 9 billion varieties. And you're making me realize, Shirley, I'm like, am I naturally a little bit of mild of a hot sauce? Could I be a little spicier? Do I need to bring someone on who's a little spicier? Like, now you've got me thinking of like, everyone has a hot sauce, and like, what do I need to add here? I love that.
Absolutely.
I want to invite you to read a part of your chapter, and then we'll reflect on this experience a bit and open it up for questions. And so for everyone who's just joining Shirley's chapters, #MoreLove, LessFear. It's chapter 23. It's the perfect closure to the book. If you haven't read it yet, Shirley, would you read for us?
Yes, I'd love to. Thank you. I took a lot of pride in doing things myself and didn't ask for help very often. My difficult childhood experiences formed the belief that there weren't many people that could effectively help me. Either they didn't have the knowledge, experience, understanding, skill set, or capacity. So I stopped asking and took on more and more myself. My entire life was built on self-reliance and resourcefulness. It fed the part of me that felt like I had to prove to the world that I was worthy. And it weirdly made me feel safe. I could do it all because I was Superwoman, right? So I did do it all. Running around stressed and overwhelmed. I was running my business, raising 2 kids, planning and controlling life. I had it down. I was doing it, wasn't I? The successes gave me the illusion I was in control and abated the fear that if I didn't do it all, who was I? What would be my worth? It became increasingly stressful and overwhelming to stay on top of everything all the time. Some crisis would inevitably occur. My industry has a propensity for crisis, and I found myself surviving life rather than living it. I knew that this was probably not sustainable long-term, but felt powerless. What else could I do? If I wanted to grow the business, I had to keep on taking more clients. I didn't have the kind of money to hire dedicated employees. I couldn't see another way. So I just did more.
So as the audience, as you listen to this, maybe drop in the chat. Do we have any current super women or super women in recovery here with us today? I'll throw that question out there. And Shirley, as you were reading that, it actually made me think of something I've been reflecting on of, it's almost like I actually only want to surround myself with people who are in recovery. And what I mean by that is people who are self-aware and are noticing the places that they want to heal, that they want to grow, who they want to become. And so it almost now feels like a non-negotiable for me that like there is that awareness, there is a spiritual path behind the scenes of whatever business or career journey someone's going on. So you just reminded me of that, of actually, I think it's so important for more people to go on a journey of recovery, whether that's from an actual addiction or all of the other addictions that many of us have, if we're being really, really honest in today's modern
My
world.
coach says we're all breaking an addiction to ourselves.
Yes.
The way we think, the way we project, the way we see the world, like it makes us who we are. And it's also very hard to let go of that when you want to grow. You know?
It's yeah, I mean, like, what is it? Joe Dispenza's book, Breaking the Habit of Being Ourselves. And, when I was reading that book, realizing of like the body and autopilot control that's happening, where it's like, I'm not even, it is a reaction. It is an addiction to just being self. And it takes intentionality to break from that.
Yep.
And a willingness
courage to let go of that, because it's also how we've operated and how we've been successful. So there's this idea of like, if I let go of that, like, how can I be successful? It's kind of what's gotten me here, right? So this kind of, for me in my own journey, I kind of got to a plateau of, is this it? Or do I want more? Do I want to stay with what I've known? Or do I fall into the abyss? That's a really scary feeling, so.
And yet it feels like the abyss, the unknown, like we're all stepping into this great awakening, this leadership awakening. I mean, I see it happening here in the comments. And I want to ask you, you talk about this inside out paradigm in your chapter. And so if I think of even like Kasha responding here of external expectations, what it means to be successful, it can be really easy when we're chasing the external things to know that we're making progress. We see the house get bigger. We see the titles go up to SVP to CEO. Like we see all the hallmarks. But when you're on the inside out paradigm, what do we see? Like, how do we know we're on it? What do we see? What do we feel? What are the hallmarks or milestones when we take this path?
For me, it's been, and it continued. I mean, I'm certainly not perfect. There are days where I get up, I'm like, I just need the world to just validate me. Just externally, just tell me I'm doing great. Because I don't have the strength today. But it comes from a sense of wholeness and fulfillment and contentment from within. Because I've had the experience, when you're chasing the external, it will never be enough. You get to one thing and then it's like, you need more. And it's like more. It becomes in itself, like Hash was saying, like it becomes an addiction of sorts, right? You get a little bit, you get a little hit. It's like, I did great. And it's like, I want more of that. I want more of that. And then all of a sudden we're extending ourselves and it's like completely out of alignment to who we are. And it's like, at what cost and what payoff, right?
Mm. Well, while we don't need external validation, it's like you are now a best-selling author in this book. So that's like, it's just nice, it's more like the cherry on top over here. But what for you has been the best part about putting your voice out there in this way and sharing your story, and kind of bringing us into, some things maybe that you haven't shared before in this chapter? What's been the highlight?
I think the highlight for me has been the continued self-growth of putting myself out there. I'll have to tell you, when the book launched on Friday and I texted my 20 people and I called my 75, I'm like, and then, I was getting back all these responses and like, purchased, reading it. And I'm like, oh God. And then I'm like, oh gosh, I'm like, what if they think I'm writing like a third grader? What if they think I'm, and then it's like all the critical, scary thoughts of what it means to put yourself out there. I really had to work through that. And it's like, am I proud of my chapter? Am I proud of what I did? Yes. So you know what? It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter what anyone else thinks. And that, I know they're like these simple, as my coach says, the work is simple, not easy. They're simple concepts. They're just not easy to grasp and to really get there, because there's still this what are they going to say? What are they going to think of me? Am I going to burst their bubble that they think I'm this super intellectual person? They read my chapter and they're like, oh. So there's just all this happening in my head, and it was just continual had to go and being proud of just putting myself out there. It's like Brene Brown says, it's like, you can take the cheap shots, right? From the nosebleeds, but what is it like to put yourself in the arena? And I'm like, I'm putting myself in the arena.
That was just a telepathic connection right there. I was hearing you, and I'm like, I'm definitely bringing in the Brene Brown quote, which I think is from someone else too. We've got to be in the arena and we have to show up, and yet it is scary. And yet we have to feel the fear and do it anyway. And it's like, when you feel that sense of inner satisfaction, it is a nice kind of buffer. It's like a warm coat, if whatever's going on out here, okay, but I did this. I didn't just talk about it. I didn't say I was going to, I did it. And there's so much power in that.
And I would say, we are a very pain averse society. And I love this quote. Pain only hurts. That's it. Doesn't kill you. It's not like, oh, it just hurts. And then it goes away. It's not forever. But sometimes I think we avoid pain like the plague. It's like, oh my gosh, I'm just gonna die. And just like a Reiner, pain only hurts. It's like, that's it. We don't die. We a lot of times grow stronger. So I'm into kind of leaning into our fears and really piercing through that and aligning back again to love.
It's so beautiful. And I love too, this backdrop is so perfect for your chapter, for this conversation. So thank you for bringing the extra love. And I know we have just a few minutes. These conversations have been flying by today. So I'll open it up just to the group, whether you want to come off mute or here in the chat to acknowledge Shirley, to give her some love, or to ask a question about this topic, about her chapter, and about the Great Leadership Awakening. So we'll take just a moment for anyone who'd like to share.
I'll take all the external validation.
Why not? I'll give you some. Hey, Shirley. I know I was walking my friend's dog in the rain, listening to you and feeling all of it. And now I'm here. And I don't know if I have a question. I just want to say it's so awesome to see you doing your thing and the intersecting hearts and the paint and the love. And Yeah, I mean, like odd ducks and freaks. Here we are. We got our own summit, people.
Yeah.
Yay, Shirley.
They gave us the mic. Thank you so much, Lisa.
And Lisa, like you kicked us off this morning, is like, we belong everywhere. No, yeah, don't fit in, belong everywhere. Yeah. Thank you.
Love it.
Would anyone else like to share, validate, ask a question?
Shirley, I haven't had a chance to read your chapter yet, but I really want to read it now after I've heard you talk about it.
Oh, good. Yay. Thank you.
And when you do, and when you share, and now we have hashtag more love, less fear, start another, like we're sparking so many movements from this book, the Leadership Awakening, Yayfulness, more love, less fear, soul excellence. Like we all get to be all of us and spark our movements, and then like do it with the shared power of leadership behind us all, which I hadn't really thought of till right now, but that is what's happening as we show up and we speak up and we share here in the summit, which, yeah, it's like, there's always more. There's always more. We want more oxygen. We want more love. We want more connection. And it feels so good.
Yes.
Shirley, what's next for you this year? You've published this book, your business has grown, you're doing this work. What's next for you?
I want to continue to expand the business to run without me being so involved. That's my next like chapter of like, okay, that's what I'm working on, is putting a system in place and trusting that things can run without me. So I can take more time to spend with my family and friends and travel and work more and do on the horizon that have my interest. And so for me, that's kind of the next chapter, and potentially a memoir, a story of my mom and I, and a little bit of, I grew up with Joy Luck Club, and God, that spoke to me in like ways you would believe. And I think, Lisa, we were talking about like Everything Everywhere at Once, like is kind of like a newer version of that. But, my mom has, is this just strong, original gangster of a woman that was like the original like boss bitch. And she just like came to this country with like nothing and like made it happen. I mean, and there's a lot of, stories, a lot of stories like that are untold. And there's kind of this feeling, people have told us for years, you should tell a story. And I was like, oh my God, I'm like, who would want to hear it? And like, oh, then I have to like air out all my like family laundry and all the things. I'm like, I don't know. But, this was a step towards that. And I'm like, I'm ready. I'm like, bring it on. I told my mom, I'm like, I'm ready. And she's like, oh God. She's like, what do I do? I was like, get ready. So those are kind of what I see just in front of me.
Oh, well, it's so beautiful. I wish you luck in finding the hot sauces to run the systems while you get to do your thing. And you're obviously in good company. You've got Mary, you've got Rachel in this group who have written memoirs to turn to as well, to encourage you on this journey, since it brings up so much. And I want to thank you for sharing your wisdom in this book, for sharing it with us all here. You are incredible.
Thank you, Kayleigh, for the opportunity to bring this to light and to step out there. This is not, even though I look like this, like I don't want people to look at me. It's very, it's the thing I'm working on myself, but it's like, okay, I'm here. I'm like, they're all looking at me. And I'm okay. So, thank you so much.
You're so welcome. Keep shining. And for those of you joining, we appreciate you. Thank you for rounding out day one of the Great Leadership Awakening Virtual Summit with us here. We're going to pick things up again tomorrow at 9 a.m. Eastern, 6 a.m. Pacific for the real early birds. I'll be kicking us off again, and our authors will be sharing more of their authentic selves, more of their stories, more of their wisdom. And just like in this conversation, really letting all of us in behind the scenes of what it's been like to share their stories, to build their businesses, to shape their careers, and to do so with that inside out paradigm. Because I think that's what we've all realized that we have been doing, whether we've had a name or not. If you're here, if you're in this book, that's what's actually been happening. So thank you everyone for joining. It's been such a beautiful first day. Come back tomorrow, catch up on the replay. Shirley, thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Kayleigh. Thank you,
You're
everyone.
so welcome. All right, everyone. We'll see you tomorrow. Thank you.